Phil, Riley here, Riley Photos. I wanted to make a quick video. I haven't done much online recently. I've been really super busy at work as a pro photographer, but something that I come across quite recently is when you've been doing this game for a while. I've been at it sort of 45 years. Yeah, my eyes, the prescription in this eye now is really really strong because of using it so much for focusing, and you know, over the years, and my nose is over to one side so much from putting the camera against it, but that's you know, not much really for to put up with for a fantastic career in photography. But talking to some friends, one or two people have been telling me, you know, if they've been getting on a bit, that they still have got the passion for photography, but unfortunately, you know, the bodies aren't helping them. And what I'm talking about here is tremors, these shakes, you know, whether that's sort of you know, Parkinson's or tremors, you know, themselves, you know, involuntary movements of the hands. I think the difference, I think you know, Dwayne, one of the you know, great sort of followers of the channel, hi Dwayne, was explaining that essential tremors, which is what Dwayne suffers with, they actually only happen when you're doing a task, when your hands are doing something, whereas Parkinson's is all the time. But either way, you know, to sort of curtail your love of photography, it's such a shame. But he was telling me some of the things that, you know, he's put in place to help him continue with his photography journey. And I thought I'd share that with you, just because anybody watching this who has, you know, tremors or the start of tremors, you know, to just say, you know, these are one or two things that you might be able to put in place to help you, you know, continue your love of photography. But thinking about it, all started with my friend Paul. I think you've always seen Paul on the channel. He pops up from time to time. If you haven't seen him, he's a great aviation photographer. If you check out my videos, you'll see one is about aviation, and you'll find Paul on that video. And Paul was telling me that, well, actually sold me one of his lenses. He sold me a 400mm for the Fuji, which is a great lens. With the crop factor, it's a 600mm lens, and it gets me, you know, when I do work at a zoo, there's a zoo I do some work for, and it gets me really close into the animals, which is great. But I couldn't understand why he'd sold it. In actual fact, he bought a Sony. What is it? Is it the RX10 Mark? I can't remember now. But you know, that bridge camera that's got the 600mm equivalent lens in it, and it sold me the 400mm so that he could buy that. And the reason was the weight of the lens. With, you know, his hands, he got a little bit of a tremor starting, you know, on his hands, and he said it just made it difficult. And although you know, he could use the image stabilization, which he did, and he said interestingly, he said without image stabilization, he'd have very few pictures, because anything now kind of under 125th of a second on the shutter, he said, look, you know, I need image stabilization, else I'm not going to get anything, you know, just to take that movement out from his hands. So he was explaining this to me, and then Dwayne got in touch, and I asked Dwayne, you know, what he'd done in his photography journey to help him to keep shooting, and despite, you know, the essential tremors he has. And I've got some stuff that he sent me on the phone, so excuse me for reading it out, but I want to get it right. He says, look, over 40 years of being interested in photography, you know, he you know, when he got diagnosed with tremors, you know, he thought that would end the photography. But he started planning early on with his diagnosis on changes that he needed to make once the tremor started affecting his actual photography. He said, I'll read it out. I began finding objects that I could set my camera on to avoid shaking the camera with my tremors while I was taking the pictures. So that's the first thing, you know, and even maybe using the self timer on a sort of short 3-second setting. So you could pop your camera on something, frame everything up, and then press that, take your hands away from the camera, and then capture the image. The other thing that he did, as well as using the self timer, was get a Bluetooth shutter button. So he hooked it up to the camera via Bluetooth, set his camera up, pointing at whatever he wanted, and use the button in his hand to fire the camera. He also started using a window mount for the camera when he was shooting from the car. So if he could drive somewhere and get to a shot, then he could you know, mount the camera on the window. So that's also a really useful one for you to maybe think about. Obviously started using a tripod. I suppose that goes without saying, you know, if the tremors get so much that you know, you can't hold the camera still enough for a picture, then you know, a tripod's the answer. He's tried weighted gloves when holding the camera. So, you know, weighted gloves on his hands to you know, to stop the tremor being so so forceful, I suppose. And obviously using a fast shutter speed. He always obviously chooses the fastest shutter speed available, and with high ISOs now, that obviously gives you access to you know, far faster shutter speeds. And here's an interesting one. He changed to heavier cameras at one point using a D 7100. That'll be the Nikon, won't it, I guess. And he said that helped reduce the tremors by using a heavier camera. So obviously that a lighter camera meant the tremors moved it more, I suppose. So yeah, consider changing to a heavier camera. Short focal length on the lenses, that's obviously going to make a difference, because the longer focal length you know, makes the tremors look even worse. Obviously the more you zoom into something, I mean, you know that even without tremors, like when you zoom into something on a 400mm, you can see your hand movements all over the place. It's really hard the further you zoom in to keep the camera still. So if you are starting to experience any kind of, you know, tremors in the hands, then try and keep as wide as possible, and that will, you know, generally help. Use stabilization, obviously. Here's an interesting one. He said, I'm reading this, by the way, as I'm saying it, but he says, and if all else fails, try intentional camera movements. Because that's one thing that tremors are going to help you with. I don't know if you've seen ICM photography, intentional camera movements. I've got a video on the channel. I'll put a link up here now, and perhaps I'll leave that one at the end. So when you finish this video, I'll leave a link to the intentional camera movements, and that'll explain how some photographers are really getting some great results and really enjoying intentionally moving the camera with slower shutter speeds to create some really nice sort of light effects. You know, they look quite cool. I enjoy doing that myself. And he started using Google Photos editing using the unblur tool to try and you know, try and get something back on his blurry photos. So that's interesting. I've not used Google Photos editing. I don't know if anybody has. Leave a comment below, and you know, let us know how you got on. But that's one thing that, you know, Dwayne has used. He's also tried editing photos using Snapseed, but it's a little bit difficult because of the fine details. What he's saying essentially is that I think editing on his phone was slightly easier than using the mouse. Although he did say that when it comes to the mouse and the motor controls you need on your hand, he uses one that has a ball in the top so that he can move the ball with his fingers, rather than having to move his hand, which with the tremors is difficult. So, so you know, maybe when you're editing, consider using a mouse that's got a ball built into it that you move with your fingers. let's read this. Being a Nikon DSLR photographer, he says, the one thing that gives him a lot of issues is where you have to partially press the shutter down halfway to focus lock. He says his right index finger while doing that trembles along with his hands and is unable to get a good photograph. That's a good point. Something that we don't think about. If you don't suffer with tremors, you wouldn't think, it seems really easy, doesn't it? Focus locking. Yeah, you depress the button a little bit, you get locked on, and then, you're free to continue pressing. But with, tremors, that's incredibly difficult. He says to compensate, he changed his Nikons to a back button focus, and that's helped him considerably there. Great workaround, Dwayne. I hope that's helpful. Maybe if you're struggling with a little bit of shake or tremors, to hold that button down, depress, try back focusing. Another issue, he says, is his tremors have created in photography. He can no longer point and shoot cameras. And he just needs a little bit more setup time. And he's also kind of realised now that although he said earlier in the early stages you use heavier cameras, now it's got to a stage that he needs plenty of equipment, but not to carry around. Doesn't want to be carrying too much, stuff around, and he can't have anything too small and light because he can't hold it steady. He said a lot of his cameras have no viewfinder, so he's forced to use the LCD back monitor. So I'm unable to use my body to stabilize the camera. That's interesting. So what Dwayne's saying there is actually looking through the camera through a viewfinder is better for him because he can get the camera close into his face and sort of lock it in on his chest and hold it steadier by holding his hands on the camera, sort of tightly against his face, against his chest, and that helps him keep the tremors to a minimum. So that's interesting. And he said, but the biggest change for him that he's kind of resorted to later on when the tremors have got much worse, he says, one piece of equipment that has helped me continue my photography at all is the cell phone. With its touch screen, I just tap the screen where I want it to focus and then, tap the shutter button to take the photo. He said, I do get some blurry photos, but not nearly as many as with the DSLR. And his last option, he says, to salvage photography would be surgical intervention if it gets bad enough that he can't take pictures anymore at all. But here I want this last little line here. I wish you could read this last little line. The most important advice, he says, that I can give anyone is, capital letters, don't ever give up. Don't ever give up, says Dwayne, who's still enjoying his photography. He often comments on the channel here and sent me some pictures of stuff that he's done. And he's a great photographer, and would be a shame for him not to have the joys of photography because of the tremors. And he's found ways to get around that. And even if he's had to ditch the DSLR in the end and go to a cell phone, he can still enjoy photography. And that's what it's about. It's about the enjoyment. It's about taking the pictures. He says here, I'm going to read this again because this is you, Dwayne, giving everybody advice, not me. Don't allow any disability from preventing you in taking photographs. Enjoy your photography. Hey, there's nothing more I can say to that. That's great advice, Dwayne. I hope if there's anybody out there that enjoys photography, that has some tremors starting for whatever reason, those tips from Dwayne go to help you continue to enjoy your photographic journey and taking pictures. it's photography. It's a beautiful thing. You know, I've enjoyed most of my life taking photographs, and I really hope that you do too. I hope that advice helps. Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you for taking the time, you know, to share those tips and what you found useful out. And look forward to seeing your next message. I hope you like the video. And hey, thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your photography. See you next time.